Muzikinis Takelis. Muzikinis Takelis.
Takelis is back, and today we're back with a new episode with a new genre which will consist of two parts. And I'm really excited to introduce you my best friend and colleague Thomas,
Welcome, guys. Welcome again.
and me, Lucas. So today we're gonna review gospel as a genre from start to the beginning. So it will consist of two episodes. At the end of the episode, we will try to include a mix of around roughly 30 minutes where you can listen to this genre music, which will be produced, mixed, and prepared to you to listen by Thomas.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you will be able to listen to it here if we will get some not disclaimers, but copyright strikes, or something will be fishy and we're unable to make this mix, or this mix won't be available here. We will leave a SoundCloud link where you will be able to listen to this without video, but still get the full sound experiments there.
Yep.
So, Thomas, today we're stepping into deeply spiritual and emotionally resonant genre, which is gospel music. It's not just a style, it's a history, it's theology and cultural force. Whether heard in a small country church or booming through festival speakers, gospel music carries an unmistakable power.
And absolutely, gospel music is a genre rooted in faith, but shaped in history, pain, hope, and of course community. And it's often defined by its uplifting messages, dominant words, and harmonious arrangements. But the gospel isn't just one thing. It's a genre that means different things in different places, and it's taken on many forms over the centuries. So there's a black gospel, southern gospel, a Christian country, British gospel, and even gospel rap today.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is that gospel music's earliest threads stretch all the way back to the 17th century. That's over 400 years of tradition. At its core, gospel emerged from the intersection of African music heritage and European Christian hymnody, especially in North America. Think call and response patterns, clapping, foot stomping, and cappella singing, not just music, but full body spiritual participation.
That's a really correct and great point. Before we had instruments, congregations used whatever they had, like hands, feet, voices, creating this rhythmic, soulful expressions of belief. And it's kind of similar to the beatbox beginnings. The early black churches in the American South especially leaned into this, developing a gospel style that echoed both African traditions and the spirituality and the spiritual urgency of Christian worship.
And one more important note, the term gospel song itself first popped up in 1874 with a songbook by Philip Bliss. Philip Bliss sounds like a rapper name. But the gospel as a living musical tradition was already there in churches, at revivals, at camp meetings, long before music industry caught on.
And names like Georgia Fruit, Charles H. Gabriel, Fanny Crosby, they became foundational figures in shaping early gospel publishing. And with the rise of revivalist preachers like Dwight L. Moody and his musician Ira D. Sankey, in the late 1800s, gospel hymns started to boom. These were more emotional, simpler to sing, and packed with the kind of catchy melodies that stuck with you.
It's important to highlight that there weren't that these weren't meant to be academic or high church compositions. They were meant for people. Literacy wasn't widespread at the moment, so repetition and emotional delivery helped get the message across to everyone, especially in rural communities or revivals where printed hymnals weren't always accessible.
And it wasn't just churches that noticed this. The advent of radio in the 1920s changed everything. Suddenly, gospel was reaching ears it never could before. And artists like Carter Family and promoters like James D. Vaughan began recording and broadcasting gospel widely. So it was entering, you could say, that time a mainstream.
Right. Wagner. Wagner?
Vaughan?
Vaughan.
Oh, yeah.
And others like Homer Redeheaver and Charles Tindley even established publishing houses. They needed a constant supply of new music, and this opened the floodgates for many gospel writers and performers. Gospel was becoming a business, not just a spiritual tool.
And it was during this period that the gospel started branching. So the black churches developed their own distinct gospel sounds, rooted in spirituals, the blues, and the lived black experience in America. So that soulful, deeply expressive vocal delivery came to define that we now call black gospel.
And let's not forget there's Southern gospel too, often associated with all-male quartets harmonizing around a piano. Think the sensational Nightingales? Nightingales?
No, nightingales.
Nightingales. The Swan Silverstones and Soul Stirrers, that quartet style tenor, lead, baritone, bass became iconic. These groups traveled, sang in auditoriums, recorded on early vinyl. It became entertainment, faith, and commercial all rolled into one.
That's nice. And while gospel sound evolved, so did its reach. It started moving beyond church walls into popular culture. Artists like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, like she was literally one of the first to mix gospel with guitar-driven rock and roll, and she did it with so-called swagger.
Swag. A queen in her own right. She was one of the earliest gospel artists to play electric guitar and with a ragtime twist, thanks to pioneers like Arizona Drains. These women weren't just spiritual leaders; they were music innovators.
So basically, to conclude, to sum it up, gospel music started as an expressive spiritual practice born in places of hardship and faith. But its story is also about cultural synthesis, media, migration, and industry. And it began with hands clapping and voices raised in unison. It grew into a global musical language. From Mahalia Jackson's soaring vocals to Kirk Franklin's chart-topping gospel rap.
Exactly, and this block of Muzikinis Takelis, we're going to follow that journey. So, from its earliest days to major artists who redefine it, from backwoods camp revivals to Billboard chart toppers, and we will dig into each major branch of the genre.
Yeah, and coming up with with our second block, we'll go deep into the 19th century revival movement and how it laid the groundwork for what gospel would become.
And we will also meet some of the original giants of the genre, names like Ira Sankey, Fanny Crosby, and Charles Gabriel, and see how their songs still echo today.
Yep. So, you can take your headphones, blah blah blah, and let's go.
Let's go. Let's jump into the second.
Yeah.
Or you have some notes which you would like to put in, or something to discuss?
No, I'm just really into this. I'm really trying to transform myself back like 150 years back, or 100, it doesn't matter.
To understand what the hell is going on, yeah? Okay.
So, since we have block 2, and from camp meetings to city revivals. So this is the birth of gospel publishing. So let's rewind the clock again. This time to the mid to late 19th century, a time of spiritual fervor across the American landscape. Revivalism was sweeping through towns and cities, and people were gathering at camp meetings that lasted for days. We're talking open air sermons, fiery preaching, and spontaneous singing, and deeply emotional conversations.
Yeah, these weren't your quiet Sunday morning services. This was grassroots Christianity in full force, wild, raw, and full of conviction. People from all walks of life, especially those from rural communities, would come together and sing songs that were simple, repeatable, and emotionally charged.
And that's exactly what birthed the gospel song. A form distinct from traditional hymns, while hymns were often structured, formal, and based on scripture or theology, gospel songs were more personal. They told stories of redemption, struggle, and salvation in plain language and catchy melodies.
In 1874, Philip Bliss published Gospel Songs, a choice collection of hymns and tunes, a landmark in gospel history, and that term, gospel song, stuck. Bliss, together with Ira D. Sankey, became one of the most powerful musical duos of revival movement.
Sankey, though, was musical partner of the famous evangelist Dwight L. Moody, and their collaboration helped shape how gospel music was used in large urban revivals. So Sankey would often sing solos during Moody's sermons using a small reed organ, and people were amazed. And his voice was clear, his songs were heartfelt, and well, it stayed within you.
Exactly. And here's what's cool. Sankey wasn't trying to impress, he was trying to connect. Like me on Forest without Wi-Fi. I'm just trying to connect. These songs had a direct line to the emotions and spiritual needs of people, and it worked. Soon other composers followed, like George F. Roth, Charles H. Gabriel, William Howard Doane, and of course Fanny Crosby, who wrote over 8,000 hymns, many of which are still sung today.
Fanny Crosby was almost blind, yet her lyrics had vision. She wrote songs like Blessed Assurance, To God Be the Glory, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior. It's amazing how someone could capture the depth of Christian experience with such clarity and hope.
And as these songs spread, so did the need for publishing houses. Enter figures like Homer Rodeheaver and O EOXL EO people who understood that gospel music wasn't just a tool for faith but cultural product. They printed songbooks, sent out quartets to sing and sell them, and built an entire industry around gospel.
It's kind of wild, isn't it? Like that something so deeply spiritual also became a business. But it wasn't a kind of cynical thing. These publishers believed in the music's mission. They just used smart tactics to get it heard. To get it heard. That included radio, of course, which exploded in the 1920s.
Yeah, and let's talk about James D. Vaughan. Is it? Would you say Vaughan or Vaughan? Whatever. Vaughan. Yeah, Vaughan. Let's say Vaughan. He was one of the first to combine music publishing with radio broadcasting and touring quartets. He figured out that if people heard a great gospel group singing a song on the radio, they'd want to buy the songbook and sing it in their church. Smart, right?
I would say so. And he created his own empire in Tennessee, and others followed, like Virgil Stamps, Jesse Baxter, who eventually founded the Stamps Baxter Music Company by the end of the 1920s. So gospel music was everywhere in the South, from Sunday mornings to Saturday evening radio hours.
And let's not forget how the style was evolving. In these publishing houses and live quartets, a format developed. The four-part harmony, tenor, lead, baritone, and bass. And when you heard these harmonies, smooth and tight, often sung a cappella, you knew you were listening to Southern gospel.
Which was still mainly a white rural style, but around the same time in the black church, something very different, yet as just profound, was happening. So gospel was beginning to absorb more African American musical influence, blues, spiritual, street preaching, and even the jazz.
Exactly, but what will be our focus in Block 3? Before we jump ahead, we should mention the Holiness Pentecostal movement, which played a massive role in making gospel music more expressive, even ecstatic. Churches that embraced Pentecostalism encourage shouting, dancing, clapping, and spontaneous singing in tongues.
True that. This was a dramatic shift from the formality of early church's traditions. So suddenly, music was just a scheduled part of the service. It was the service. So gospel in these settings became freer, like more improvisational, and it wasn't about impressing with technique. It was all about the power of emotion, of feeling, and the testimony.
And this open, expressive style started influencing other churches. Even those who initially resisted the new gospel songs, like some more conservative or mainly Protestant churches, began to include them, especially as the revivalist fervor spread.
True. So wrap it up. Late 19th and early 20th centuries were the formative years for gospel music as an organized, recorded, and a commercial genre. We saw the birth of gospel publishing, the explosion of revival music, and the emergence of key songwriters who laid the groundwork, the foundation for every style of gospel that came after.
Yeah, and the use of radio, sheet music, and traveling quartets provided that gospel wasn't just sacred, it was scalable. And just like that, a genre meant for worship became a musical movement.
That's right. So next up in the block tree, we're gonna dive deep into the rise of black gospel in the 20th century and how cities like Chicago became epicenters, how figures like Thomas Dorsey and Mahalia Jackson changed the game, and how gospel became the soul of the black church.
So, if block 1 was the roots, the block 2 was the structure, then the block 3 is the soul. Stay with us, but the soul will be deconstructed or talked more about in the next episode. So we would like to finish this episode here. We would like to thank everyone who listened. Stick around because we will be playing a mix at the end of our talk where you can listen to see what was the music then, what people were listening, how it felt, what it was. I will say that Thomas probably will have a really nice time creating this mix and making it sounding good, or at least making it in one direction. yeah. So stick around. This is a really nice opportunity for everyone to listen, to check. Maybe someone will be familiar with some kind of sounds or some kind of structures, and it will give you some new understanding. Thomas, do you have something to say before we end the part 1?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add up that I think the mix can kind of enhance some associations of maybe some movies, maybe some episodes from somewhere that you've been, you know, maybe from church visits or whatever, or even, you know, if you've been to America,
Mandatory church visits.
mandatory church visits, or the optional ones. And yeah, it's just nice. It's just nice to immerse into this. See, pretty old. I think it's right now it's the oldest. Can we call? Yeah, we can call genre, like the oldest genre we have been talking. Like recently,
Yeah,
no?
yeah. I was actually thinking that we one day probably will go in a little bit deeper into older times, and then we will be exploding our heads and listeners' heads, hopefully.
Well, I mean, for now, direction goes pretty much towards it. So, you know.
Yeah. So I think this will sum up this episode. Stick around, listen, follow, subscribe, leave a comment that I spelled or read something incorrectly. I will be happy to read and to reply. And see you in the next one. Ciao, guys.